As we say goodbye to another year, let's look back on the 12 months as we've done for the past few years. This year started off with former President Donald Trump winning the 2024 presidential election and being inaugurated for a second term on January 20th, and almost immediately began signing executive order after executive order. On January 20th alone, he signed 26 executive orders, more than any other president before him has signed on day one. As of writing this script, the president has signed over 200 orders, most of which have been trying to undo the previous president's actions, such as withdrawing from the World Health Organization and the Paris Climate Accord, and reversal of federal recognition of gender identity and the right to abortion. Another one of Trump's Day One executive orders was the establishment of the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE. It was set up to modernize and streamline the federal government and cut excess spending from within said government. To head this department, Trump appointed tech mogul and billionaire Elon Musk. Musk, through this department, laid off or furloughed roughly 300,000 federal employees or civil servants. The two seemed to be getting along until June 5th, when Trump and Musk split over Trump's announcement of his One Big Beautiful Bill. Turning to international affairs, Trump has overseen numerous tariffs. One of the most well-known of these was the Liberation Day tariffs, causing a brief stock market crash. In Gaza, Trump has strengthened ties with Israel by siding with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the Iran-Israel war, and even brokered a ceasefire hostage deal between Israel and Hamas. Amid the war in Ukraine that began back in 2022, the Trump administration this year has made multiple attempts at peace talks, with most of them failing, and most of them favoring Russia's President Vladimir Putin over Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky. On July 4th, while people were gearing up to celebrate Independence Day, recent rains in Hill County, Texas, flooded the Guadalupe River. It all started on the night of the 3rd, and into the morning of the 4th, after severe and significant rains fell all over central Texas. Flash flood emergencies were issued all across the Guadalupe River area. Within 45 minutes, the river rose roughly 26 feet, or 8 meters, from what is standard, surging to close to 30 feet in the Hunt area, where a group of children were declared missing after their summer camp was unexpectedly washed away by the fast-surging river. The flooding continued through the 4th and into the 5th, then finally subsiding. In the span of a few hours, the Hill County region received the equivalent of 4 months of rain, with some areas getting upwards of 20 inches of rain in that time. When it was all over, 135 people lost their lives, and the repairs are expected to cost roughly $1.1 billion. The flood was the deadliest inland flooding event in the U.S. since the 1976 Big Thompson River flood in Colorado that killed 144 people and injured 250 more, and surpassing the flooding caused by Hurricane Helene in 2024. On April 21st, Pope Francis died at the age of 88 after leading the Catholic faith since 2013. Pope Francis had many firsts associated with him. He was the first pope born or raised outside of Europe since Syrian Pope Gregory III in the 8th century, and the first pope from South America being born in Buenos Aires. He joined the church in 1958 and became an ordained priest in 1969. As he climbed through the ranks of the church, he became known for his humility, concern for the poor, and his push for inclusivity in the church, such as permitting homosexuals to become ordained priests. In 1998, he became Archbishop of Buenos Aires, and in 2001 he became a cardinal by Pope John Paul II. After the resignation of Pope Benedict XVI, citing health concerns, he was elected to the papacy on March 13, 2013, and stayed in that position until his death. Following Pope Francis's death, Robert Prevost was elected to the papacy and became Pope Leo XIV on May 8th. Pope Leo is interesting, as he is the first pope born and raised in America, that being Chicago, Illinois. Since he ascended to the papacy, he has emphasized climate change, human rights, and said that he chose the name Leo as a way to honor Pope Leo XIII, and to echo his response and challenges to the Industrial Revolution as we enter a sort of new Industrial Revolution with the rapid emergence of artificial intelligence. Of course, this video wouldn't be complete without a few anniversary mentions. 5 years ago saw the rise of coronavirus, the killing of George Floyd, and the subsequent protests, and the devastating wildfires in Australia. 10 years ago, the landmark Paris Climate Agreement was signed. ISIS was on the rise, and the viral Ice Bucket Challenge raised funds and awareness for ALS. 20 years ago, Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast and the New Orleans area. YouTube and Reddit were both launched, and the ongoing war on terror after the 9/11 attacks was still ongoing. 25 years ago saw the dawn of the new millennium, fears about Y2K being unfounded, and George Bush defeating Al Gore in the highly contentious 2000 presidential election. 50 years ago saw the fall of Saigon and the end of the Vietnam War, the Thrilla in Manila boxing match in which Muhammad Ali defeated Joe Frazier, and the launching of the Apollo-Soyuz joint space station, the first space station of its kind that paved the way for the International Space Station. 75 years ago, the Korean War started. Senator Joseph McCarthy begins accusing just about everybody of being a communist, stoking fears and suspicions of a Red Scare, and President Truman announces plans to develop the hydrogen bomb, a bomb that would be hundreds of times more powerful than the bombs dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki just 5 years previously. Speaking of the atomic bombs, 80 years ago saw the end of the Second World War and the devastating effects of those bombs, the death of President Franklin Roosevelt and Adolf Hitler, and the beginning of the Cold War, which would dominate the latter half of the 20th century. 100 years ago, the landmark Scopes monkey trial took place, arguing whether evolution should be taught in schools. Mein Kampf and The Great Gatsby were published. And in radio, the Grand Ole Opry begins as WSM Barn Dance, highlighting Western music. 250 years ago, the American Revolution began, the birth of British author Jane Austen, who would go on to write such novels as Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. As you guys know by now in these videos, one of my favorite topics to talk about is technology, and 2025 was full of breakthroughs and discoveries. The ongoing growth and development of AI is rapidly accelerating, with LLMs quickly mastering text and image creation. The next frontier appears to be something called world models. These world models can take text and generate an interactive environment. More and more, the conversation surrounding AI is beginning to shift from chatbots to more agentic AIs. These AI agents can perform simple multi-step tasks, unlike the usual AI where you type in a prompt and get a single specific response. In August, OpenAI released their much-anticipated successor to the ChatGPT-4 lineup, ChatGPT-5, to mixed reviews and feedback. Soon after ChatGPT-5 was released, Google released Gemini 3, which fared much better than OpenAI's model. In response to mounting disappointment, OpenAI quickly released ChatGPT 5.1 and 5.2. In the area of physics, scientists at the French Alternative Energies and Atomics Commission's West Tokamak broke the record on February 12th for nuclear fusion by sustaining plasma for 1,337 seconds, or about 22 minutes. This achievement is a major breakthrough because just 4 years ago, in 2021, the longest sustained plasma burst was just 101 seconds, or around a minute and a half. That's an over 10 times improvement in just 4 short years. As you can probably imagine, controlling the superheated plasma to create usable energy is incredibly difficult. Now, I'm no nuclear physicist, but in the most basic of terms, the plasma has to be heated to around 50 million degrees Celsius, which is several times hotter than the sun's core. As for practical applications, some scientists claim that in the future, nuclear fusion could be commercialized and make energy abundant for everyone.
2025 was a year that had its ups and downs, as with any year. For me personally, it was a year marred by loss and sudden change. But I hope you all look at the upcoming year as a way to start fresh and tackle any obstacle you may be dealing with. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas and a very happy 2026.